It's really important for me that this night happened tonight for you. This isn't just a show. This is a commitment that I made when I ran for the city council, and I was going to turn my city up. I brought Floyd Mayweather. I brought Tiffany Haddish, and today I got Nick Cannon and the whole cast of Wild 'N Out. 1 year before now.
Oh my God, you guys have been heavy in my comments since my last Jason Lee video. So guess what? We got to talk about Mr. Jason Lee again and just everything that's going on with the investigation, at least the investigation going on in Stockton and Jason Lee's response. But I thought it was important, guys, because you guys know, when it comes to situations like that, I really try my best not to take sides and just give you guys the information, and you guys make up your mind, whatever it is that you decide on this argument. Jason Lee has gone onto his profile and he's made several statements, and we got to talk about it, okay? First of all, on Thursday, he says, I have been in more investigations since I started at City Hall than I have in my entire life. I wonder why. I guess the old adage, if they can't find anything, they'll just make it up, is actually true. I've never in my life experienced hate at the level where people who are so envious of you will do anything to try and ruin your image. Still didn't work. I've received so many calls, so many texts, so many emails, so many messages from people that are actually turned off by the negativity that the God I serve made every hater and weapon formed against me a step stool to more success. I thank you all for the support. I love you and I love Stockton. That's what he posted, okay? Now, let me just add a little something about myself. I actually worked in government for 10 plus years, so I kind of understand a little bit of the good old boy mentality. To work in government, to serve in government can be a toxic place, and I've seen really good areas and really bad areas, both, okay? So I'm coming from a different lens, and I've worked in different areas in government. But I will say this, so when it comes to money, every little cent, every little thing, you have to make sure that it's all accounted for, okay? And you have to make sure that you call out, you yourself are calling out any conflict of interest issues that's happening at that moment. Because I will tell you, it will bite you in the A, okay, in the AA, if you don't do something about it right away. So let me give you some research, okay, that I did further on Stockton, because some of you guys came in my comments and said, Rabbit, Stockton has a history, and Jason Lee might not be wrong here about being a target, or he might be wrong because of, the Wild 'N Out situation and how that was handled. But I guess I'll let you guys decide. So let me tell you a little bit about what I found. Let me give you guys an idea of what is happening in Stockton, okay? Because in 2025, there have been so many key moments that have led up to where we're at right now, where Jason Lee is kind of dealing with all of this and also having to face public scrutiny of everything that's happening, okay? In January 7th of this year, a new city council is sworn in with 4 new members. Christina Fugazi was elected as a mayor. One of the new council members, Jason Lee, okay, of course, District 6 in South Stockton. He is named Vice Mayor. Of course, what we know from Jason Lee is that he's an entertainer, a podcaster who founded Hollywood Unlocked. We know this. And Jason Lee has been a recurring cast member on MTV and on VH1's Wild 'N Out sketch comedy show. January 9th, the Stockton city manager, Harry Black, he had signed a 4-year contract, the previous August. But he abruptly resigns, okay? And he resigns under threats of being fired. Okay, he was actually awarded, Harry Black was awarded a $400,000 severance. And his last day of employment was February 28th, okay? So on February 4th, the city council names Stephen Calagio as interim city manager by a 4-3 vote. He is a former general manager of the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds, but has no experience running a city. He is to be paid more than $20,000 a month in his new role. Okay? Just so people are aware of what's happening here. Now, ain't that some interesting piece of information? I did not know that Calagio has no experience running the city, and he's being paid more than $20,000 a month in his new role, okay, as an interim city manager. So then let's move forward. So sometime in May 24th, Jason Lee is among the cast members at an event at the Advantas Health Arena in Stockton, which of course is the Wild 'N Out live event, okay? And then May 26th, this Stephen Calagio guy hires a consultant, okay, by the name of Stephen Salvatore, okay? And he's paying this consultant $11,000 a month. In a memo to the city attorney, Calagio said he hired Salvatore in an advisory role, providing strategic guidance on best practice in municipal management. Okay. Now, mind you, Steve Calagio is still a interim city manager, not like the main manager, the interim. Okay. That was voted by city council. So Steve Calagio hires this guy. Well, where did this money come from to pay for his salary? Well, it came out of funds that were supposed to be allocated for the city of Stockton's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And this is what Jason Lee had brought up, okay, on that clip that I played.
One is a discussion on DEI. I just want to point a couple things out because I was the one with council member Dan Wright, two white people, obviously.
So let me ask this question. Were you aware, did you have control over the DEI budget as the person over the DEI department?
Yes.
Did you know about the spending of the $40,000 for food?
I was not aware of that.
Okay. And were you aware that staff took funding from the DEI budget to pay for contract?
I was told that that money was going to be allocated towards a different contract.
Okay. And the last question I have is, was that contract in any way to help us diversify the city of Stockton?
I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. I want to be clear to staff that DEI, from what I'm hearing from all my colleagues, unless they all want to hit their button and say in front of the public that it's not a priority, is a priority.
This is what the issue that he was bringing up, okay? So again, Jason Lee brings this up as the chair of the city audit committee vows to try to find out what happened, all right? Again, I'm giving you guys a deeper look into this that a lot of people aren't giving you, to give you a perspective of why there's this situation happening with folks, okay? Sometime in June 23rd, once it's determined that they use DEI funds to basically contract this consultant for Steve Calagio, okay, the interim city manager, there's like an uproar. Stephen Salvatore is basically, his contract is terminated by the city. Now, on June 24th, it's been said that Jason Lee has been very supportive of the mayor, that he's been an ally to the mayor. However, once this situation with the DEI money came about and the funding happened and all this started being reported out, this is when Jason Lee basically said, you know, I'm concerned about the crippling DEI efforts. Okay, this money was supposed to be used for DEI efforts, but the city manager, the interim city manager named Steve Calagio, used it to hire Stephen Salvatore as a consultant, and the funds were not allocated for that. Now, here's a timeout, okay? Clearly, the city of Stockton has some work to do, and I'm not in the city of Stockton, but I have seen ish like this, and let me tell you, okay, there's no reason why it needs to go like that. Nobody should be having say this way. There should be more oversight over these funds. It was reported that in 2012, okay, 2012, the city of Stockton filed for Chapter 9 bankruptcy protection, okay? At that time, it was the largest city in the U.S. history to declare bankruptcy, facing over $2 million in long-term debt and a $26 million deficit. Why is Stockton still having issues with the way in which it's allocating its money, how it's managing its money? Now, here's a question that I have, and I think it's a valid question, okay? Why city manager, an interim city manager, allowed to dig into allocated funds, whether it's DEI or whatever it may be, but in this case it was DEI. Why is an interim city manager allowed to dig into that to pay for a contractor that apparently he needs for advisement in that interim position? That is a question that we have, and I think that's the question that Jason Lee is asking. And I think it should also be noted that, like, positions like Jason Lee, for example, as a councilman, it's a paid position. They are considered part-time positions. They don't have the benefits that like a full-time position would have, but their salary ranges anywhere from 29,000 to 30,000 a year. But all of this, there should be a level of transparency when it comes to everyone, given the fact that it was a little over 10 years ago since there was bankruptcy issues with the city of Stockton. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And another thing, why is somebody making $20,000 a month to be a city manager? Like, what the hell is going on in Stockton? Anyways, let's keep going. Sometime in July 29th, acting behind closed doors, the city decides to replace Calagio as interim city manager. A decision was made to have a deputy city manager become the acting city manager. And so what's going to happen with Calagio, it's unknown whether his release will be temporary or permanent. There's that, okay? Now, on August 4th, Jason Perry, who's the head of ASM Stockton, which manages Adventist Health Arena, okay? This is where the Wild 'N Out event was held. Jason Perry tells Jason Lee and the audit committee that the show's ticket sales were poor and that he asked the city to help compensate the promoters. Okay, he said he feared if he did not do so, its cancellation would dissuade other acts from coming to Stockton. Okay, he said Lee was not involved in the bailout discussion. So we're about to watch this whole interaction with Jason Perry from the arena and Jason Lee sitting at the chair. Now, I want you to pay attention to just the details, because this is really the deep dive and the crux of a lot of this. This committee meeting was held August 4th, so a couple days ago. And I thought it was important to kind of showcase this because it shows a bigger scope of the story. Let's go. And let me know what you guys think in the comments.
All right. And so in that meeting, I had committed to introducing you to Wild 'N Out. Mm-hmm. And I introduced you to the promoters of Wild 'N Out because it's a show that I was on television since I've left, and I had the relationship. And I knew that although I hadn't done the show live but once, that it would be something good for the Stockton area. Can you explain to us how that relationship blossomed into an event that we experienced here?
Absolutely. First, thank you for the email introduction to Eugene. I'm trying to think if Rip was on the email. Definitely Eugene. Yeah. So thank you for that. And it certainly was the catalyst. That was your involvement, and it was the very warm, welcoming email to 5120 Entertainment with Eugene. And from there, we just had regular meetings, and Eugene and Rip and I would laugh about it because it was like we had a standing Tuesday meeting. It was like we're having family dinner every Tuesday. Even if it was not to talk business, it just was to talk and continue the conversation about why they should play Stockton. And they were on the fence, by all means. They had played other markets that ASM is in, but these were the major markets, right? So they and I would talk about when they were at the Barclay Center in New York, a much larger market for sure, and Barclay being a 20,000 seat venue. And they're like, we've never played a venue this small. How are the economics going to work? So we looked at the financial feasibility of this particular show before we ever moved off of the launching the date. And part of it was, as we do in our business, is we really talk about the business model and how can we make this successful, because our long-term goal is not that we as a venue operator only get rich, right? The wealth has to be shared. And our wealth as venue operators comes back to the city. It comes back to supporting these venues. And we also want to make sure that the promoters don't leave like with this major loss that they had with Lil Wayne, but how can we mitigate that? So we talk about different partnerships, and there are different ways that we do that. And when we talk about this business model, we talked to Gene and Rip about it and said, hey, look, these are our traditional models. Some people come in and rent the facility. We give them the rent. This is what you're going to pay. Here are all your expenses, and that's what they want to do. Others want a rebate. So we say, okay, this is what it's going to look like. We run out a pro forma, and we say, okay, we can offer you a $10 rebate per paid ticket. Others we've gone into business with where we call what's called a co-pro. And that's where both sides throw all the revenue stream in. The promoter's taking all the risk. What we're doing is saying we as a venue operator need to be 100% made whole. So we can go down to what is called zero in our business, but that's after all expenses are paid. So there's no loss to the venue. And so we went through this with Rip and Eugene, and they took a few days and they're like, can we talk about this like we're in third grade? And I was like, absolutely. I love this stuff.
Sounds like Rip.
And so we went through it, and what we ended up deciding was, hey, they didn't want a rebate. They didn't want a traditional rental. They didn't want a traditional co-pro. They wanted to rent the facility, and then we would do a revenue share on our food and beverage and our service fees, which is, the two of those key PIs.
Now, while you all were having these conversations, were any staff, because I don't know your process, are staff involved from the city in those conversations, or is it directly with the ASM and the promoters?
No city staff.
Okay, and council, were any of us or the mayor involved in any of those conversations?
No.
Okay, cool.
Nope. And so that's really the decision that they landed on, because we ran statistical numbers and said this type of show should do this. Rip and Eugene thought the show would consume a lot more beverages than we did, because we also understood that their focus was family friendly, and family friendly doesn't usually do that. So we were a little more cautious on the F&B side of the way we were looking at it. But when we look at the ticket prices, we can pretty much hone in exactly what our service fees are going to be. So that was an easier number for us to come up with and agree to. And then the show went on sale. The show went on sale with quite high ticket prices. They also had a very high price tag show. So this particular show, they needed to net in ticket sales north of $750,000 to break even. And when I say net ticket sales, that's after paying the venue, paying all the expenses, all that good stuff, so that they can cover the artists and everything that goes along with that.
But understanding how expensive the show is, I think the conversation, at least when I introduced them to you, was build on this relationship. Not just, when you talked about a revenue loss of $250,000, I saw Julie's eyebrows go up. But in business, you take a loss, at least a promoter, the first year, maybe even second year, then you break even. You're establishing yourself in the market.
Correct.
I think the conversation you all were having was, how do you have more successful events to build off of this one?
Correct. It was the long-term feasibility, because our goal with Rip and Eugene was not a wild and out one and done, not even necessarily wild and out period, because Rip and Eugene do many other shows, of which we've talked about 3 or 4 different shows, one of which we wanted to have happen this summer, the end of this month. Unfortunately, as you probably know, Rip had a setback with his health again, so a lot of that stuff got paused, and he and I were just having that conversation on Saturday. But the long-term goal is still that it's going to come here. They did lose $170,000 on account for that particular show coming here to Stockton. So the risk and the investment they made in Stockton is a loss at this time, but our hope And as I've said to Rip and Eugene, is that we're true partners and that we want to move this partnership forward so that by the third show, ideally the second show, they've recouped their loss, and then we're starting to go down a profit line for them.
Yeah, I heard about the loss. I ain't gonna lie. It was $170,000 for private promoters is a lot. But I think they saw it as an investment in the relationship, and they're still hopeful about it. So that's good. I want to just switch gears back to our meeting where we were at, and we learned a couple other things. I think we started the conversation about the Lantern Festival because I had just gone with my cousin and my family, and it was really cold, and I thought the ticket prices were a little high, and you were telling us that the Lantern Festival. Tell us quickly the history of that and that we did lose them, right?
Correct. So it's now public.
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
Transparency.
So yes, the show is unfortunately not coming back. Stockton Lantern Festival was a large investment with our partners, Tiana U, to make that event happen here. It was a multi-million-dollar production on their behalf with no, say, upfront costs from us. And they were taking a chance with us. But this show in every market has, it's very dedicated and isolated to each market for the way the show looks and feels. And Stockton was a very unique show that we brought here. But every other market that's experienced these types of shows have.
Okay, so if you guys pay attention, they're not just talking about Wild 'N Out. They're talking about another show, which was a lantern show, which happened to be an issue as well that, clearly was very costly for the city of Stockton. One of the things that I did not show on this video, but it's actually shown in the full meeting, was that they discussed a little bit about the problematic issues with bringing celebrities to Stockton in that location, because some celebrities, depending on what contracts they have or what clauses are in place, might not be able to perform within miles from a casino. So they brought that up. Like they said that Jerry Seinfeld, for example, there was an issue with Jerry Seinfeld a couple years back and performing at this arena and, basically wasting money on his appearance for nothing to come out. And then there was also an issue with Lil Wayne too. So these are things that as a city they have to figure out, and it's very it seems problematic for them logistically because of various celebrity clauses for them to actually bring any kind of entertainment. Okay,
had bountiful return. One of our sister venues nets about $4 million a year off of their Lantern Festival. And that was really our long-term goal for Stockton, was that this was going to be an event that became a reoccurring event for people to make long-lasting memories, generational memories, and to be a positive revenue stream for what is otherwise a dark venue with the ballpark, and make the ballpark a profitable endeavor. And in year one, we really thought that was going to happen. It performed where we thought it would statistically. We thought financially we were going to lose. The performer said we'd lose $200,000. And we actually had a net positive gain of $6,000 off of that event. So it was a $206,000 swing. So it was quite nice to have happen. And then in year two, statistically says that your sales, you'd increase your ticket price. We chose not to increase our ticket price, and that your sales would go up anywhere between 30 and 50% of sales volume, which would have then meant that in year two, we should have netted about $450,000 in revenue. That show, in the first time in this promoter's history, actually went the opposite direction, and we saw a 50% decrease in ticket sales. Which ended up with a net loss for us of just over $200,000, and then the promoter's 2-year loss is upwards of $4 million, and made them choose to not continue with the contract.
So when you say a loss, is that a loss to ASM or the city?
To the city.
Okay.
so it's the city that takes the hit.
That takes me to the other thing that we learned in that meeting. We learned about the mitigation risk fund, and so I'll turn to you, Jordan. Are you familiar with the Mitigation Risk Fund?
I've heard it been talked about, but I'm not as familiar with the procedure around it.
You're not familiar with the Mitigation Risk Fund?
I'm familiar with,
Risk mitigation funding within the, let me go to the City of Stockton 2023-24 adopted annual budget, page I-6. It says revenue for entertainment venues are budgeted conservatively, but are showing growth and recovery following the COVID shutdown. Operational costs remain lower than pre-pandemic levels as the venues have struggled to fill some positions due to challenging labor markets. The creation of the risk mitigation funding within the venues fund will help to ensure that the Stockton Arena has an active opportunity to secure notable acts, strengthening Stockton's appeal to future promoters and entertainment. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with its existence, just have not been a part of the management of that.
Okay. Is there anybody here, Deputy City Manager Reed, that has information about this funding?
So it's my understanding that that funding is managed by ASM.
So you're familiar with it?
I'm familiar with it on our end, and I'll speak briefly to the risk mitigation. So what the thought process, or my understanding of so there was this allocation of $600,000 with the thought process that ASM in conjunction with the city could utilize this revenue stream. One, it came about after our discussions for Stockton Lantern Festival and knowing that we could have a potential loss. And it was all about how do we drive venues business and what is the thought process there. I wasn't involved in any of the discussions on the city side, so I'm just relaying things from my end.
If I can, real quick, Mr. Peterson, go to slide 22, please. Okay, so in the meeting that me, you, the mayor, the other person from your organization, my colleague to my right, and Tina McCarty, we talked about this fund, and we learned about that in the meeting. So in the meeting, you talked about the Lantern Festival receiving some support. How much money did the Lantern Festival?
That was the offset from that fund was about $201,000, if I remember correctly. It hovers right around $200,000 for the loss for that event.
What was the process to get support from the city? Is that a fund that you control and decide, or do you have to communicate with the city on determining how to use that fund?
So we communicate with the city prior to the launch of Stockton Lantern Festival. We went with the city and said, hey, this event, here's what this event looks like at other markets, and this is what the long-term plan is. How can we make something like this happen for Stockton if the city wants it? The direction was, yes, we're interested in that. We're all about activation, bringing people downtown.
Right. I don't want to get lost.
Yeah. And then then this creation of the risk mitigation fund came from that conversation and said, okay, if we have an event that has a loss, we can use this risk mitigation fund to offset it.
Okay.
With the idea that we're doing Stockton Lantern Festival, or if there's an event that we want to go out and try to secure so that we can bring business because a promoter's not doing it, or we want to offer a promoter a incentive to come to Stockton, we could use the risk mitigation fund for that, not just on our own accord, but through the direction of economic development.
So the $600,000 is a amount of money that's used for the year. Is it a yearly thing? It
was a one-time
thing. Okay, so for the Lantern Festival, you all used a third.
Correct.
Okay, and in doing so, my question is, what was the process to access that revenue for that event? Was it you calling the city calling you, or was it just a meeting to explore how to make this work for this person, this group?
As we knew that the year 2 event was not going to turn the profit like it was hopeful to do, we communicated with EDD and said, this is where it's going, and the direction was the risk mitigation fund is designed for this because we are driving the economic impact to the city.
Did you have to submit a form, fill out a form? Did you have to apply for it? Was it a competitive process, or it's just so it's just a conversation?
Correct.
Okay, I want to go to Deputy City Manager Reed. Sorry, there's so many names in my head. I'm reading emails here. There was an email sent on July 29th. When was this event with Wild 'N Out?
May 24.
And was it a good event?
It was a good event.
Did the city make money?
I'm assuming, yes. I mean, the venue made money, parking made money, and the residuals in the community had to have made money with restaurants and all that. And I know you didn't ask this, but I'm going to share it anyway, because we had 7,121 paid people in attendance at that show. The day of, we walked up 918 people. The week of the show, we sold 2,797 tickets. Of all the 7,121 people, 18% of them lived 151 miles or further away, which tends to translate that they are overnight guests. And based on the economic impact study that we had done at the venues for fiscal year 2023, an overnight visitor spends $333 on average each day that they're in the city.
How many people got shot?
None.
How many people got
inside the building?
Well, none outside.
Yeah.
There was a fight.
Right. Yes, there was a fight.
The fight for Stockton is not bad, right? I mean, it didn't spill over into the streets. Okay. I like a little laughter. You know, we had to lighten it up a little bit. Okay. So I want to switch gears. Oh, wait, when did this event happen again?
May 24th.
So I want everybody to pay attention to what's coming next. So this event happened on May 24th. There was an email sent out to you by me thanking you for everything that you did, to PD for making sure it was safe. This was May 24th. At any time during that period, did you get a call from me, any of the council people or staff directing you to give money to the promoters?
No.
Okay. So my understanding is that a few weeks ago, my colleague to my right told me that there was conversations happening around Wild 'N Out in Stockton. I'm like, why is there conversation happening about Wild 'N Out in Stockton? That there was this conspiracy theory that I somehow took $50,000 from the city or asked you all to give me $50,000. Have I ever asked you to give me any money?
No.
Okay. I've been more critical than anything else, but I appreciate your transparency. So May 29th, so a few weeks ago, I went to the city attorney and I told her that I had heard these conversations where people were plotting to make an issue out of the Wild 'N Out event to claim that I asked for $50,000 or took $50,000. Can you please explain in what world was this $50,000? Was there a mitigation risk assessment? And if so, what was that process?
Sure. So this show, kind of like we talked about with the economics of scale, we're quite large for 5120 Entertainment to take a risk to come to Stockton. And
Can I interrupt real quick? There's a couple different things going on. I just want to make sure with city attorney.
Well, before you interrupt my meeting, and I will acknowledge you to hear what you want to say, but I'm going to go right back to this. I know what not to step on, and I'm not going to step on it. But let's be very clear, anything outside of employee-related matters will be discussed in this meeting.
So I believe that the reason why this person jumped in is because there is an active investigation happening. And so just making sure that maybe Jason Lee isn't overstepping and that Jason Perry isn't over answering. I'm not really sure, but that's what it seems like to me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
Thank you. Do you want to? Okay, go ahead.
So with 5120, when we talked about the whole business deal and all of that, they asked for city support. And what was the city going to do to support this? I don't know what conversations the promoter had with anybody on the city. I cannot attest to anything like that. I can only speak to my conversations with them. And what we talked about, and Tina and I talked about, I was like, look, this show is important to the city. This show is important to the venues. They'll bring a lot of notoriety to the city, and the city needs it because at that point, we had already lost, as you previously mentioned, with regards to ICE, which has limited sales and visas for a lot of our shows that play here, 12 events. In 2025 alone, we've lost 16 shows as a result of some of the federal mandates that have come down. So we said, look, the risk mitigation fund was used and put in theory and practice, at least the way we talked about it in its inception, to entice people to come play. And my original proposal was that we would 10% bonus as a incentive to come play Stockton. And 10% of what we were giving in a rebate, so of our portion of our food and beverage. So say we were giving $100,000 of our food and beverage in service fee rebate, we would only be giving up $10,000 of risk mitigation. Fast forward, very expensive show. Ticket sales, as most people know, were extremely pricey. Then they got very aggressive with ticket pricing, and some people probably saw and bought tickets on Groupon for $6. It's probably the cheapest ticket ever in the history of the venue. And as a result, ticket sales still were not moving enough. As we mentioned, we moved 2,700 the week of the show. So we can tell that the promoters were very, very nervous because they needed to have the show sold out. Their intent was to have over 10,000 people in market. We were nowhere near that. So Rip called me the night before, or the afternoon before, and said, "Jason, we're going to pull the show. We're taking it out of Stockton." And I was like, we can't. Stockton cannot afford that. Stockton cannot afford another show going away, especially one of this large magnitude that's getting as much publicity as it has gotten, because Nick Cannon had been on every news circuit in Northern California, like everywhere.
To promote the show.
To promote the show, correct. And so if the show went away, it just would have been bad. And then in the industry being so small, word would have gotten out that Stockton couldn't even move Wilden out. And it just went out. So when Rip and I were talking, he said, how can we really redo this? Because right now I'm looking at losing upwards of $300,000. And I get it. Let's see how we can do it. And what ended up happening was I said, here's how we can restructure our deal on the venue side, and let's see what the city's willing to do. And that's when I called economic development and said, hey, the show's going to go away. Can we make it happen or can we not? And then there was a series of questions that came back to make sure that there was reasons for justification. One of which was really, is the show going to go away? Like, is the building also going to be remaining whole? So yes, the show went away. Is the building going to remain whole, or the venue going to remain whole? Yes, the venue's not going to take a loss. And two, we're not giving up any parking revenue, so we're still going to have that parking revenue. But most importantly, are we developing a long-term relationship and collaboration with this promoter who understands that this is a one-time commitment for their return?
Well, I just would like to just point out again, the document I referred to, 2023-24 adopted annual budget, page I-6, at the last sentence says, the creation of the risk mitigation funding within the venues fund will help to ensure that the Stockton Arena has an active opportunity to secure notable acts strengthening Stockton's appeal to future promoters of entertainment. I mean, look, as much as we're going to criticize you for the performing or underperforming arenas, knowing that you don't control everything, we also have to be very clear on what our own program says and what we do. My understanding is that economic development then worked something. I mean, I was in Mexico on vacation, so I'm not a promoter here. I don't know anything about it. But my understanding in post meetings with economic development is that there was $50,000 from this mitigation risk to help support. And if I can recall what you said here today, and by the way, we transcribe all meetings, so the transcription's available, is that the city made money, parking made money, the local economy benefited from the 18% that came from outside the city, but the promoter lost $170,000, but was still willing to work with us.
Correct.
Okay, let me move on to Deputy City Manager Reed. You sent an email on July 29th, which was 2 months and 5 days following this successful event that we heard here today. And in the email, actually that was a response from Economic Development. You sent it on July 28th. Will Crew did. There's a series of emails here. I'm sure you have. You're familiar with what I'm talking about because you're copying on them. There's several questions about this event. And I've done some research, and the reason why I moved this meeting up quickly is truth, trust, transparency that we all talk about here. We're gonna get into optic in a minute. It's about really just having these conversations out in the open because we have nothing to hide. Okay, there was a series of questions sent to Economic Development specifically around this matter. Can you tell me why 2 months and 5 days after this successful event this email was sent?
It's my understanding there were just a request for follow-up. and so that was what initiated the email.
Who requested the follow-up?
City manager.
Okay, and what was the request for?
I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
I'd had the question sent to me.
So this information I'm referring to is available for public records requests if you want to see it. In here, the Economic Development Director, Tina McCarty, responds in red with every answer that, in my opinion, looks consistent with what we've heard and how we do business with the venue. Did you see anything in that email that stood out to you that was questionable?
Not particularly.
Okay. So let me move on. Well, my colleague here to the right had a question about KPIs. You want to ask now?
It doesn't seem like this is the direction of the meeting, so
What direction did you want to go in?
my questions were relative to ASM.
Oh, okay.
So it wouldn't even make sense to
Okay.
bring
So,
my question up.
so going back to this specific matter here, did you know, or did the city manager's office explain to you that I had brought the event to the city? Did you know?
I think I knew. Yeah.
Do you know why nobody asked me any questions?
I do not.
Okay. Anybody else from the city manager's office want to step to the podium and clarify why I wasn't asked any questions? Of course not. Okay, so have you been in conversations with 5120 Entertainment about future, is there still a conversation about bringing them back to the city, doing business with the city?
Yes,
Okay, so the relationship is good?
correct.
Okay. Well, I just want to put on the record that this conversation about what we're talking about today was had with the city attorney and I weeks ago, to put it on the record for several reasons. One, we're the audit committee that audits and oversees and provides oversight to the city's internal, external functions, how we govern, how we lead. It's not about who we like and don't like. It's about policies, rules, and laws, stuff that we have to follow. And I wanted to make sure that, one, there was an extreme amount of transparency over this event. In fact, after the event, because I did get a call from the promoters in Mexico who said they were canceling, and I said, well, tell me how we're going to communicate this, because it's going to look like a complete failure. So call the people at the city, call Jason, y'all figure it out. I'm in Mexico. I mean, I was out at a party, I'll be honest with you, because I do have a social life. And the next thing I got was, okay, we're back on, we're figuring it out. So I did come back and meet with economic development and said, how did you save it? Because Rip is so annoying that, he's very impulsive at times. And it was explained to me that they were able to figure this out. And the thing I said there that I will say now and I'll say in every other venue, whether it's private or public, I never want anybody to do a favor for me, because that's not why I'm here. I don't need favors. But I will introduce opportunities to the city so that way our partners can be successful, the city can be successful. And thankfully, my friends in business understand that you're going to take a loss before you take the gain, because you have to build. And Stockton is very challenging. I will say you all did a great job working with them to get the word everywhere. I think they left their signs up, and that pissed everybody off because people on Facebook were blaming me for the signs, but I wasn't a promoter. I volunteered my time. Councilwoman Padilla was also on stage, and she introduced me, and it was a great event. And so I just want to say that I'm hopeful that unless are there any other questions, because I understand in an email that I got from the city manager's office that there are still third-party inquiries going on into this matter. I would like to know if the city management department has any question with respect to this issue, this transaction, this partnership, this support to our partners, that they ask now, if they can, in full transparency of the public, because there would be no other reason to. Do you have any other questions? Because this is a long email that you got here.
No, I do not have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you, and I look forward to sending you more referrals. We just had a call the other day. Deputy City Manager Reed, Deputy City Manager Christie was on the call with FIFA. So I'm gonna just put this out here now. Was it a great call?
That was a good call.
Didn't it make you feel excited about the opportunity to get FIFA to come? Oh, we have public comments. Okay, hold on. I'm learning still. To get FIFA to come to the city. What I will do is we're setting up a follow-up meeting to talk to FIFA, And then once staff are ready and prepared to introduce you to the conversation, I'm really excited about where that can go for our community.
Perfect.
But thank you.
As we mentioned when I called and requested the meeting with you in February, like, it's all about that. It's about the collaboration. We, on my end, use the word team because we're a collective team. It's not ASM and city. We are one voice because we're all driving people into our community. And before I leave the podium, I do just want to mention, because it's worth the public hearing about the venues, we did do an economic impact study around the venues, and this was done in December, and it hadn't been released. It was provided to the city, but it hadn't been made public. And it just talks about how the venues, though there is a fund from general fund, the economic impact on Stockton alone is $38.7 million driven right from the venues. So without the venues, that $38.7 million wouldn't be in our community.
I look forward to continuing to partner. When I say partner, I speak from the city, not as a personal private partner. I have to be very clear about my words. In bringing in new people to the city and introducing relationships, that's what I ran on. That's what I committed. That's what I will continue to do. I'm just finding the vehicle in which to do it in a safe way. Thank you for entertaining my madness. I've been very critical, and I thought the first meeting, I thought you were trying to manipulate me because you were so nice, but I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. But I ended up liking you anyway, and we'll continue to bring you. Yeah, he's a likable person. That's probably the name. All right, let's get to public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gabby Gonzalez, please.
So this August 4th committee meeting, I think, is very strategic, for Jason Lee to kind of clear the air, clear his name, and, bring about the professionals that were involved in the arranging of this event and other events, and, kind of like show that this is how he handled the situation. Again, knowing that there's an active investigation and people could ask questions. I mean, he's asking for transparency. What a way to do all this when it's in a public forum, it's being recorded, everybody can see it. And I think that's the piece maybe that, like, if you're only reading articles about it, you're not really getting the whole scope of it, which is why I thought it was important to bring it here with every single part of it. All right. Some of it is a little like, oh my God, I'm about to fall asleep. It's boring. But at least bringing the relevant parts here is important. Let's keep going. So on August 5th, in response to news media inquiries, the city released emails between its officials and Perry showing that it contributed the $50,000 to bail out the Wild 'N Out live show, again, through the risk management pocket. Jason Lee questioned why the city manager suddenly took an interest in the show 2 months after it occurred. Jason Lee raised questions of political retribution for his digging into alleged improprieties in city government. Okay, so again, Stephen Calagio, the one that was an interim manager, was the one that was looking into Jason Lee and just the expenses of this event. Steve Calagio countered that he's investigating how $50,000 was spent to bail out Wild 'N Out without his consent or authorization. Well, here's my question about Calagio. Who consented or authorized for him to get a consultant out of the $100,000 DEI funds? I guess that's the question. This is the messiness out of having city budgets, okay, with not a lot of oversight. This is the kind of stuff that you encounter. On August 6th, Jason Lee and council member Mario Enrique called for the California Attorney General to investigate allegations of possible budgetary fraud by Steve Calagio. The issues involve funding of a department that they say had been eliminated. Okay, so again, a lot of this auditing stuff can be found on the Stockton website if you are interested to see the different things that they look at. So the city has a designated risk mitigation fund, okay? And that is what they use for the Wild 'N Out show, all right? For it to happen at the Adventist Health Arena. And to be very clear, Jason Lee, who has been on and off a recurring cast member of Wild 'N Out, was billed as one of the live performers, okay? Tina McCarthy, the director of Stockton's Economic Development Department, said that she approved the use of up to $50,000 to help the promoters of Wild 'N Out with potential losses, encouraging the show to continue without cancellation. In a July 5th email to the Deputy City Manager, Chad Reed, she added that the city contribution allowed the show to feel more comfortable with their potential loss, including the need to drop prices to encourage greater attendance. As news of the emails broke on Tuesday, Jason Lee issued a statement which he alleged that the surfacing the emails was an act of political retribution for his role in trying to ferret out budgetary and financial irregularities at City Hall. He questioned why the city manager office waited 2 months to request information about the event, which I think it's a fair statement. To remind everybody again, Jason Lee was a recurring cast member, was billed as one of the live performers. Okay, so Jason Lee makes the connection to Wild 'N Out folks and promoters and staff, and Jason Lee performs and was billed as one of the live performers. This, my friends, I think would be considered a conflict of interest. Now, I do appreciate that Jason Lee is saying, hey, this needs to be investigated because this is a bigger picture. There's a financial mess going on in Stockton. And I kind of agree. It seems like they don't really have a handle in their finances. And the interim city manager, Steve Calagio, which I think is supposed to leave in August, said that he had launched an investigation into how $50,000 was distributed without his knowledge or approval, and additionally, whether boundaries between policymaking and administrations were crossed, referencing Jason Lee's involvement without using his name. Jason Lee, who took office representing South Stockton District 6 in January, has been the most outspoken member of the council. And I will say this, I feel like if you watch a couple of videos and I've been sitting and watching a couple of the meetings, you could tell that he is probably the most outspoken out there, which I think is great. I mean, you want somebody that's outspoken. He had been especially vocal lately about plans to divert nearly $100,000 embarked for the city's efforts at diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Calagio could hire the consultant that he needed as a city manager. After this little controversy with Calagio and the hiring of this manager, the council decided that Calagio should be replaced, whether temporarily or permanently. However, none of this has been made clear. He's supposed to be out, I think, this month. He's expected to leave as interim city manager this month, okay? In announcing the audit committee's unanimous recommendation for an outside investigation, Jason Lee, the chair of that person, said Stockton residents deserve the truth and vowed to hold those responsible accountable. And he is quoted saying, the integrity of our government is under attack from within. Jason Lee said, if proven true, this represents not only a violation of state law, but an abuse of power designed to silence staff and mislead our community. We will not allow political games to undermine transparency, accountability, and the hardworking people of Stockton. The Wild 'N Out show wasn't the first to receive a city bailout. The city kicked in $125,000 to subsidize the second year of the Stockton Lantern Festival. And in that committee meeting, the Lantern Festival is discussed. A show involving lighted displays, McCarthy said in her email to the deputy city manager. Of course, Jason Lee is not too happy with what people are saying online, of course. So Jason Lee is encouraging people on his Facebook to Google 424 of the penal code, okay? And that would be the California Penal Code section 424 PC addresses the misappropriation of public funds. It is a felony offense that applies to public officers or anyone entrusted with public funds who misuse those funds, okay? So I think he's referring to Calagio hiring a consultant using the DEI funding pot, okay? The law covers various actions like appropriating funds for unauthorized purposes, loaning or profiting from public money, and falsifying financial records. So just so people are aware, okay? Now, Jason made a very public statement to people, and I'm pretty sure he was referring to anybody reporting on this, which, Jason Lee is going to do what he's going to do. But he gave attention media. You've been warned. I just had to do one for you. But since I didn't warn you, I thought I would be fair. Write whatever you want about me, but make sure you get the facts right. Issuing DMCA takedown notices on a daily. Okay. For those that don't know what a DMCA takedown notice is, it's a legal request. So it's just basically a request that they make to have social media things be taken down at a request, but it's a legal request. Write whatever you want about me, but make sure you get the facts right. Issuing DMCA takedown notices on a daily. My attorney is amazing. Okay. So then he tags the attorney. And there's a post that he writes, and he says, here's a courtesy list of all the things I will do if you write anything that is slander, defamatory, or is written with the attempt to create reputational harm. Number 1, sue you and your company. Number 2, try to get you fired. Number 3, if posted on social media, have a strike against your account for misinformation and work with whatever platform to have it deleted. Number 4, if you have 10 plus strikes, I will have your social media account deleted. Number 5, I will expose you. Number 6, I will get paid. I built a career that made me millions of dollars from controversy, so I'm not afraid of it. In fact, I welcome it. Proceed with caution. I may be a vice mayor, but I will still F you up. Ooh. Jason Lee has spoken. I will say one thing about Jason Lee. I may not agree, and I'll have my opinions about the things that I feel like happen in this situation and what is right and what is wrong, right? Just like you guys should. But I will say one thing about Jason Lee that I think has always stood out to me. Very early on when I started on YouTube, there was a case, the Kaylin Walker case, where Kaylin Walker was like a Z celebrity, had done a couple movies, Superfly. Jason Lee had the opportunity to interview Kaylin Walker. Kaylin Walker was facing multitudes of R-ing charges of young women in Los Angeles. Jason Lee brought in Kaylin Walker for an interview. And that interview was a good interview, but not only did he bring Kaylin Walker, he also brought the victims, which not a lot of bloggers were doing. Matter of fact, a lot of bloggers were trashing Kaylin Walker's victims. So I have to give a lot of props to Jason Lee for stepping out of that and actually allowing victims to speak. So regardless of whether I agree or don't agree with Jason Lee and his tactics, whatever they may be, that specific situation, I will have to say, deserves a shout out for. But that's just my opinion. And again, we're reporting facts here. That's what we're doing. I don't have a bone to pick with Jason Lee or anything like that. I'm just literally reporting what's been said out there and putting it into factual content. Y'all let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Rabbits out. Bye, guys.